I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 43. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Well, hello, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. I say that every week, and I really want you to know I mean it. I know that you could tune your ears in other places and not here. And I'm so happy you're here. I love being able to prepare these outlines for you and deliver them to you and hopefully help get you thinking in a new way and give you really actionable stuff to be able to take back into work and life. Well, let's get started with a couple updates. Number one, June Mastery Group started this week. And if you didn't know about that, it's because you weren't on the class that I taught a couple weeks ago, which was called How to Trade Being Busy for Actual Results. And participants of that class, if they wanted to, they could implement what they've learned alongside me. And so we have a small group of people that are in it and they're going to crush June. I can tell. I've had some good conversations with them. And then we started our groups yesterday and they are off to the races, which is fantastic. The other thing I'll say is that we have a new website and we just went through a rebrand, which is exciting because when I started this business, it has grown really quickly in the last year. And, we've just been hustling behind the scenes and really working closely with clients and working on this podcast and doing different things. And I had a baby. And so now it's been really great because we've had a chance to lift our head from the work and say, okay, let's take a breath. The website that we had up was something we put up out of necessity, sort of in haste a year ago. And now it's time to really identify what is our brand? What do we stand for? What kind of branding will match how we work with people and what matters to Velocity Work? And so I think we've done a really good job. So if you want to go check it out, it is velocitywork.com and it's a beautiful site. It's much more informative. I think it's much more user-friendly to navigate and there's a lot of clarity there. So help yourself. I hope you enjoy velocitywork.com. You'll start to see our new branding all over the new materials. Clients, you'll see it in workbooks and it'll be spread everywhere. And we are really proud of it and pumped about it. Well, today we are talking about attorney margin. And here's what I mean by that. It is the revenue that's generated by the attorney, by an associate attorney that works for you or an attorney that works for you, the revenue that's generated by the attorney minus the investment that has been made for that attorney. Now, here's the thing. There's a few different ways to look at this, and I love digging into this with clients because usually they haven't done it for themselves until we really get into it. And it's so fascinating to see the light bulbs go off, no matter what the number is. If the margin is much greater than they thought, it's exciting for them. And there's nothing more delightful than seeing a really solid return on your investment. And if it's not quite where you want it to be, or if you're not making money in that attorney, you're losing money by having that attorney in-house, then it's so informative. You know immediately what you need to focus on in order to correct that, right the ship. And so we'll talk about that as well. But that's what we're talking about today, because if you have attorneys that are working for you, then you should take a look at this stuff. You should have a regular look at this stuff. Now, why is it important to know? Any investment that you make in your firm, you should track the return on that investment to the best of your ability. And this one is pretty easy to do, or at least get very close on. And so there's just no reason not to do it. But I highly recommend, anything you put your money into with the expect of a return, then you need to be tracking if you're getting that return or what kind of return you're getting. So marketing efforts, if you do not know your ROI on marketing efforts, you're doing it wrong. You need to track that. Any investment that's being made. And I consider, and I know many of you consider, your team your employees. They are investments. They are assets to the business. That's the way I look at them. And I think that's the healthiest way to look at them. And so any attorney that works for you, there's an investment there and you need to know what your return on it is. Let me give you an example of the math on this and what it could look like. If you hire an attorney and let's say you are paying them $150,000 a year, that's what it works out to be. And when I say you're paying them, I want you to consider all of the compensation that you're giving to them. Are there bonuses involved? Are there any form of incentives involved? What's their salary or how are they paid? And really look at the full picture. Sometimes when I'm working with people on this, they do consider the salary, but then they forget there's bonuses. Like, do you give them a car allowance? Do you give them a cell phone allowance? Do you give them a bonus for lead gen? Like what? Everything that you pay this attorney needs to go into their compensation bucket, right? So let's say the total compensation for this attorney is $150,000. I'm going to keep numbers round just to be simple on the podcast. Okay, so you pay them $150,000. Now, let's say that they actually, the revenue that they generated for the firm was the gross revenue they generated was $575,000 in that year as well, that same time span that you're looking at. So they brought in 575 and you're paying them 150. But now, so we could easily, when you think about the equation for figuring out your return on your investment, it really is the net return divided by the cost of the investment. And so here we can say, we know that, okay, so 575,000 minus their 150. It'd be really easy to say that that is the net return. But I want you to think this through thoroughly. Is there support staff that is allocated to this attorney? They need to be taken into account as well. And if they don't have like a full-time person working for them, maybe there's someone that works in your firm that splits up their time. Then you don't have to get super perfect about this right off the bat. You just want to get a read. You can get perfect later, but I think it's really helpful to sit down and just get a read on things. And so if you say, let's say you have a couple of people that part of their job is supporting this attorney, maybe half of their workload is supporting this attorney, then you just take what you pay them and you divide it by half, like 50%. And that's how much you should also put into the cost bucket for this attorney. And here's the other thing. Here's why. Sometimes it's helpful to think of it like this. You need to look at that attorney as a business within the business. And so you kind of needs to have its own P&L on some level, which we're doing here on a really high level. So if we're looking at this attorney as the business within the business, then we need to look at the revenue generated by this attorney, which is 575 in this example. And we need to look at the cost of having this business within the business run. So that is the attorney's salary, and that's also any support staff salary. Now, there may be other things that you realize you should take into consideration. That's going to vary from firm to firm. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to run with those two major costs towards this that go into running this business. So we have the 575 is the revenue. You're going to subtract 150 for the attorney compensation. And then you're going to subtract the support staff compensation. For the sake of simplicity, let's say that's $100,000 total. So what you're left with is $325,000. That's your net return. Okay. Now, you're going to divide 325 by the total cost of the investment, which we said was 150 for the attorney and 100 for support staff. So it's $250,000. So $325,000 divided by $250,000 is 1.3 something. So you're going to multiply that by 100 to get the percentage. So that's 130% return on your investment. Good to know, right? This is really helpful to know. And the other good thing to know is the net return, that $325,000. That is what the firm is making. That is that business within the business. That is the net profit, so to speak, of the business within the business. And so that's money that gets to go back into the firm. And so the reason it's good to know this number is because you need to decide, do you like the way this is working out? If you don't, then there's a few decisions that need to be made. Now, what you need to plan on when you're hiring an attorney is that there is going to be a period of getting them ramped up. I used to know someone, a consultant, that would say it's sort of like a pregnancy. Like, if you think about what it takes to get pregnant, so there's a little bit of courtship, between you and the attorney. Is this going to work? Are we a good fit? Da 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 da. And then you make the hire. And then it takes about 9 months for that person to really sort of step into themselves fully into the firm, like to really get ramped up. And I loved that. I think that's a really smart way to look at it, because oftentimes it does take 9 months. I'm just working with a firm now where they essentially, the attorney worked for 9 months, was hired in March and worked through, through the end of 2019, for the 9 months they worked, the firm lost about 16 grand on that attorney. But it's like, that's about what it took to get ramped up. And now this year already, the firm has made, I'm talking like the net return from this attorney is 150 grand in the first quarter, right? So it took time to get them ramped up, but it was a good fit. It was a strong fit, and they did get ramped up, and now they're cruising. So just know that there's going to be this space. And so if you're considering hiring an attorney, you need to start courting potential candidates well before you need them to be ramped up. You've got to think about it that way. If you bring someone on and you want them to hurry up and get to it and start to, make you a solid return within a month or two, even 3, that's too much. That's too much pressure. That means you're throwing them into the fire. There's no really strong onboarding. There's no mentorship by you. There's no organized way of bringing them in. You're essentially just throwing them to the wolves if that's your plan. And so you need to be thinking long term, and you need to be thinking about what it's going to take. How can you facilitate them getting ramped up in the ways that you want them to? How can you mold them into what you want them to be inside of your firm? How can you help them reach their full potential? So that is what I have to say about hiring someone on and making sure you're giving the space. And if you are expecting return much faster, how does that make sense in your brain? Like, how would that happen? People who have a lot of experience here understand that it takes time. And so you need to understand it takes time. Otherwise, it's just wishful thinking and you're going to be disappointed. There's a chance I'm wrong about that, but you don't want to, don't play that game, right? Okay. So the other thing I want to talk about here is that there's a couple of different things you can do with this information. And it's kind of fun to play with these numbers. But one that I want to point out is that with that net return, that $325,000 net return, you can divide that by the number of cases that were involved in that net return, that were involved in the revenue, right? That were involved, in the revenue for that business within the business. And so let's just say, the net return is 325. And you divide it by the number of cases that were involved in the revenue, then if it was only 10 cases, right? Depends on the kind of firm, the practice area. But if there was only 10 cases and that was the net return on those 10 cases, it means that the net revenue per case is about $32,500. It's almost $33,000. But if you are a different kind of practice area where the average revenue per case tends to be a little bit lower than that, so let's think about that. If there's $325,000 is the net return, and maybe I'm keeping the math really simple here, there were 32 cases involved in that revenue that's for that business within the business, for that attorney, then it's about a little over $10,000 per case is the net net return, the net revenue. So it's interesting to look at this stuff. You want to just play with these things and look at them, because not one number is like perfectly indicative of like, you won't ever make a big business decision based on one of these numbers, right? Like just because there's a positive ROI doesn't mean that is like the sole decider on should you keep this attorney around or not. That doesn't make any sense. Like, they could have a crappy attitude and be killing your culture, and you could find someone to replace them that would do just as well, right? Or let's just say that their average revenue, like the net return per case on average, is about $10K, and you want that to go up. Well, you don't just decide to let them go. It helps you decide your decisions, but one decision is to let them go. The other decision is to step in and really coach and mentor them and help them see things the way you do, help them operate in the way that you do, so that maybe you can get that up a little bit. So there's different decisions might come from what you're looking at, but it's really great to play around with different ways of looking at the return that you're getting from this attorney in your practice. It's really valuable to have a look at these. So looking at the attorney margin is very important, and knowing what the return on your investment is very important. And just looking at the attorney only, the cost of the attorney only, is not the way that you should do it. You've got to look at the support staff as well that's supporting this attorney, because you really just want to start thinking of that attorney as a small business within the business, within your firm, and start evaluating things, even if it's just at a high level, not granular, evaluating things from that perspective and being able to have conversations with the attorney about that. Like, they should know this. They should be able to calculate this, and you can have that conversation with them, that you want them to know what their net return is in the business and what they're bringing to the firm and what that means, so that they can understand their value and they can deliberately contribute to the value, and not just be cruising along, right? Like, they need to pay attention to the business within the business. It is their business, and they have a responsibility to at least have knowledge about that, because they're a high paid employee of the firm. So I hope this is helpful. I think, if nothing else, there's many of you out there that know that this is something you should look at, but haven't really taken the time to do it. And I hope this breaks it down in a really simple way. And just so that you can do it simply, you don't have to use a ton of brain power to sit down and look at it. So to give you the equation again, you want to take the net return. So that's the total revenue that attorney is bringing in, minus what you're paying them, minus what you're paying the support staff that's contributing to them. And then that number is your net return. So you want to divide the net return by the total investment that you're making into this little business within the business. And so in this scenario, that was the cost of the attorney was $150. The cost of the support staff totaled $100K. So that was $250,000 is the investment into this business within the business. And so you'll divide 325 by 250, and that'll tell you your percentage of ROI. It's 130% return on your investment. And then from there, you can also look at, that 325 is that net return. You can divide that by the number of cases that were involved in the revenue for that business within the business, and have a look and see if it feels low. Does it feel high? And it can help you move in the right direction with your decisions. It doesn't have to mean that you make a very specific decision, but it helps you narrow in and understand where you need to give focus, where you need to give attention, where you need to celebrate things where you just weren't aware of how well it was going, right? So it's very informative. I hope this was helpful. This is one thing I work on with clients when we're building out their tracking dashboards, their portals. And so I thought I would share it here with you. I'm going to do more numbers focused thing as we move forward, to share with you some of the things that I go over with clients. There's a lot more to it than just numbers. I know you guys know that I'm a big believer in that the best way to grow a business is to grow the person who's running it. But there's a balance, and I'm going to try to bring more of the numbers to the podcast as well as the growth aspect for you as the owner. Have a wonderful rest of your week, everyone. I will see you here next Tuesday. Hi guys, it's me again. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, you probably understand that growth requires results, not just staying active. If you want to learn how to build your days around getting results, I'll show you how in this zero fluff class that I teach. Go to velocitywork.com/results for registration information. I cannot wait to see you there. If you want to hang out with us on social, come on over to Instagram. Our handle is velocity.work. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/meetvelocitywork. Cheers, my friends, to real growth and a great life. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.